Welcome into our 2022 American League Central Roundtable. So excited to have this crew here tonight. We got Tigers, we got Guardians, the debut of the Guardians, we got White Sox, we got Twins, we got Royals. The whole division is here, and it's a crew in here. I mean, we're ready to go. We've been waiting through the lockout. I know everybody's super excited. We got a great show for you today. So we're going to talk today about offseason, who we think is going to win the division, farm systems. It's all coming for you on today's episode. And I do want to start by asking everybody, what are you most excited about for the 2022 season? Scott?
I mean, not being the worst team in the division, honestly. I mean, finally having a like, hey, we're supposed to be relatively competitive. I think that's really the entire city for Detroit is just like, hey, we're finally not like going into a season. We're like, hey, we're probably going to lose 100 this year. Like, just a nice little change of pace, even if you don't think we're a playoff team or whatever. Just the sheer fact that we're actually supposed to be relatively competitive deep into the summer is fun for a change.
Scott Bentley, Locked On Tigers, Locked On White Sox, defending Central champs. Nick, what are you most excited for in 2022?
It's defending our division championship. In the history of the Chicago White Sox, we have never gone back-to-back division champs. However, this fan base, this team, we want so much more. We'd like to win a playoff series, and we're kind of banking on health right now, and we can get into that at another time. But Sox fans and myself, especially, are looking forward to a healthy Eloy Jimenez and a healthy Luis Robert, get them to play 150 plus games and play deep into October.
Rylan from Locked On Royals. Rylan, Bobby Witt, man, we'll get to him today. I'm sure you're excited. Is it Bobby? Is it something else? What are you most looking forward to in 2022?
Yeah, it's got to be Bobby Witt Jr. I mean, having him come up, having him be kind of the star of the franchise, the face of the franchise, something that Kansas City hasn't really had, a guy that's just a bona fide star. He looks to be that. Plus the addition of Nick Pratto eventually this year and kind of the young prospects coming up. And just this team kind of looking more competitive than it has in the past. So that's all that the Royals looking forward to right now is Bobby Witt Jr.
Jeff Ellis, Locked On Guardians. I mentioned the debut of the Guardians. Group looks somewhat similar. Jose Ramirez is the face, I guess, in the last couple of years. But what are you most looking forward to in 2022, Jeff? Is it to watch J-Ram just continue to mash?
There'll be some exciting hot dog races. Put your money on mustard. And in all seriousness, I'm looking forward to for as much as we all kind of make fun of the Guardians, they've really stockpiled a ton of young talent. I spent all last season talking about the 40-man crunch. And in terms of just minor league depth, we'll get into they don't maybe have the stars at the top, but they might have the deepest system in the Central. When you're going 20 deep and it's legitimately everyone is a prospect that is expected to make some kind of impact in the majors at some point, and 8 to 9 guys this year. So Steve Kwon, give a shout out to one of our sponsors with Bet Online. It's if you want a dark horse rookie of the year, Saros over at The Athletic wrote about, he's the guy I want to see. I mean, he put up numbers that were unbelievable in terms of how hard it was to strike him out with his high slugging percentage and stuff like that. And he's undersized, and there's all the reasons he shouldn't be effective. But he had honestly one of the best seasons any hitter had in the minors last year. Statistically, right up there with any big name you want to talk about. And he's all of 5'7" and was a 6th round pick. But he came from Oregon State, a huge program for production. So he's kind of the guy to watch out. But in general, just the next wave of youth that's going to hit this year.
I always say there's nothing more exciting in baseball than a top prospect, right? And you know that, Nick, from watching all the Sox guys come through. Scott, been watching Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal and all those guys come up. I think for me, as it's been every year, guys, can we get 130 games from Byron Buxton? That's what excites me, the possibility of that. So definitely looking forward to that. Big off season for some of the clubs in here, for our clubs. Royals last year, Carlos Santana, I remember, made some noise. Andrew Benintendi this year, a little bit quieter. I know Hunter Dozier, the extension last year. Rylan, what do you think of the Royals offseason when you look back?
Yeah, I think that looking back on the offseason so far, the only move that they've made has been practically trading Mike Minor for Amir Garrett and Zach Greinke. Obviously, the trade was only for Amir Garrett, but you cleared up enough money in that trade to go sign Zach Greinke and bring him back. I think that Zach Greinke admitting that he's going to take a leadership role and help these young pitchers who have struggled so far in their career after all of their hype coming into their careers is a big deal. I think that's a massive win for the Royals, and having Zach Greinke there, teaching them how to be a professional pitcher and teaching them what it's like being in the MLB and being a Cy Young winner and all that kind of hunky-dory storybook stuff. The offseason in general, I would consider a win for the Royals just because you improve the bullpen a bit with Garrett, and Garrett brings a different mindset, a different edge to the Royals that they just don't have, frankly. And then you get Greinke back in Kansas City, which will sell tickets and also help your young pitchers who are the backbone of this rebuild. If these young pitchers do not turn their careers around, this rebuild fails, and you're going to go back into another 5, 6, 7-year rebuild. So it's massively important that these guys get on the right track, and Zach Greinke can help that.
Scott, one of the more active Tigers off seasons we've seen certainly recently. They bring in Eduardo Rodriguez. They bring in Javier Baez. They bring in Michael Pineda, Big Mike from Minnesota. Definitely going to miss him in the rotation. What do you think of the Tigers offseason, and what's your grade?
I mean, it's got to be A- at worst, I guess. I mean, this is a huge offseason, especially looking back on what the last half decade of Tigers off seasons have been. I mean, Robbie Grossman last off season was the first non-1-year contract we gave a free agent in half a decade. So, I mean, that's since the 2016 off season. So I guess just short of that. But I mean, going in and going consistently 1-year deals. Oh, we got finally a 2-year deal, right? And I love Robbie Grossman to death, but still Robbie Grossman, and finally then getting to an off season where we went out, we got an ace for this rotation. Erod is absolutely going to be the opening day starter and going to be the ace for this year. We had the worst shortstop situation, I would argue, in all of baseball the last 3 years. Finally got that taken care of. Got one of the better shortstops in the sport. And along with, doesn't really count, I guess, with the parameters of the offseason, but now we're going to call up 2 of the 5 or 6 best prospects in all of baseball as well this season. So you take a team that had a win total in the high 70s, right? 77 wins, and you're adding 4 impact players on opening day, assuming Green and Torkelson make the roster out of camp. You're instantly adding that. And, Tucker Barnhart, for what it's worth, one of the better defensive catchers in all of baseball, also brought in. I mean, I think that this is like I said, you're adding 4, maybe 5 impact players on a team that's win total was in the high 70s last year. So I'm very, very excited for this season, and this is one of the better off seasons we've had probably since Mike Ilitch passed away, honestly.
Nick, I do want to ask you first. We'll break down a little bit more of what happened in this division. Twins adding Carlos Correa, Sonny Gray, trading away Mitch Garver, Gary Sanchez, Gio Urshela added to the roster. A lot of turnover with the Twins. The Tigers, Scott told you, additions. Really excited about Ryland. Zach Greinke's there. Jeff, the Guardians, man. It's just there haven't been a ton of additions in the off seasons. I know Eddie last year, and I know you've been calling for them to improve this team. Nick, in some ways, the White Sox outside of the bullpen haven't seen much activity. Kendall Graveman brought in, I think, one of the more underrated relievers, moves to the bullpen, now has been outstanding. They bring in Joe Kelly. What's your perception of the offseason for the White Sox?
Rather incomplete. It's tough to put a grade on it. After the Sox were bounced by Houston, our general manager, Rick Hahn, in early November talked about, there's holes, there's glaring holes if we need to get better, and we have to do the work. And we as fans, we don't see that work being done. It's been very confusing offseason. They picked up Kimbrel's $16 million option. Hahn was very transparent, which he never is as a general manager, talking about how Kimbrel has got value, but it might not be on this club, yet he's still on the club right now. The Sox targeted starting pitching, right fielder, and second base, and we're still looking for that right fielder. There really hasn't been any movement with starting pitching. They brought in Vince Velasquez to maybe help out as like a sixth arm, a swing guy with Ronaldo Lopez. You lose Rodon, and you're going to ask Michael Kopech, who only threw 70 innings out of relief last year, to step in to the rotation. Dallas Keuchel's not getting any younger. There's a lot of questions still. If we were going to go all the way, those are the expectations, not only win a playoff series, but win the AL pennant. And I don't think we're there quite yet. Okay, you brought Josh Harrison in. That's fine for second base. Graveman kind of replaces Tepera. And Joe Kelly, we'll see if he's healthy enough. I think he is. He might not give us much at the beginning of the season. But what I think we as fans are saying, you see the finish line. You've put in all of this work during the rebuild. You've announced these issues in the offseason, but you didn't go out and address it. And right now we're dealing with potentially our right fielder being a combination of Gavin Sheets and Andrew Vaughn, who are natural first basemen, and they're trying to turn them into right field. So we've got some issues here on the South side.
Jeff, always feels like, Nick mentions the outfield. Always feels like Cleveland is just like an outfielder or two short. You mentioned a lot of guys are coming. You mentioned Kwon, and hopefully they can fill that out. But to me, in recent years, one or two additions I feel like could do so much for them offensively. And they won't take that step. That's my perception. What's your response to that?
They just keep rolling it back. It is essentially the exact same roster from a year ago. I'm trying to think of Brian Shaw was a big free agent, and they just gave him $3 million to come back. And I did 2 shows talking about the overpay there. They haven't done anything. That's just the truth of the matter. I go back to, because someone could have gotten rich if, you put a counter on how many times I talked about the 40-man. They're packed full. They just moved 2 guys to the 60-day disabled list who are minor leaguers, which they've never done. We assumed they'd be active in the trade market, and all we heard was, well, we finished, second or third and all these things. They need help at first. They need help at catcher. They need help in, conceivably both corner outfield spots. Now, Kwon, we're hoping will fill one. But, truthfully, it's like they didn't set they hit the snooze bar and then just slept through the offseason. They have literally your 4 additions. Luke Mailey is a backup catcher, bringing back Ryan Shaw. Sandy Leon is a non-roster invitee who's probably going to make the team due to injuries. Then Aniel De Los Santos, who's another non-roster invitee. So they haven't done anything. It's just there's no other way around it. They have kind of sat out this offseason, and now we're going to see what they can do.
Rylan, who won the offseason in the American League Central?
I'd say the Twins cleared up a ton of money and got Carlos Correa. That's huge. I think that there's no bad outcome for the Twins, so I'd say the Twins won it just for the simple fact of either Correa makes the Twins competitive and able to make a playoff run in the expanded playoffs, or he opts out and you save money in that Donaldson trade, or you just trade him at the deadline and you get something for him and you cleared money in the long run. So I don't see any way that Correa deal could go bad. So I think that they've made the best move and also the safest move for their future. So I'm going to have to go with the Twins.
Scott, I know Correa was on the Tigers' radar, certainly with the Hinch connection. I was shocked. I'm sure everybody in here was shocked to see him go to a different American League Central team and for it to be the Twins. I'm still shocked. I will not believe it until I see him in a regular season game wearing a Twins unit. I think it's crazy. Scott, who won the offseason in your mind? You sound excited about the Tigers. Do you believe they improved the most this offseason?
Yeah, I do. I'll be a homer and openly a homer. I think the Tigers had the best offseason in the division. I think the Carlos Correa signing is the best move within the division this offseason, but offseason as a whole, I think it's pretty comfortably the Tigers. Again, like you're taking a team that has been a bottom dweller for half a decade and took a step forward last year and brought back everyone that was important to that step forward last season, as long as bringing in kind of the top end power and top end talent that they lacked. I think you're talking about a team that could in turn go from one of the worst teams in baseball in 2020 and then 2 seasons later be in the playoffs or at least very close to the playoffs. And that's an unbelievably quick and impressive turnaround. I think a majority of it has to do with this past offseason.
Nick, do you agree?
Yeah, we see a lot or saw a lot of Javi Baez, with watching what he has done on the north side of Chicago. And that's a big signing for Detroit. Detroit is a team that we as Sox fans have been looking over our shoulder. We know what's coming in Detroit with their arms and the things that they've added, not to take anything away with what the Twins have done. Listen, the Twins scare us and have always scared us, going back to, the Ozzie Guillen days of him managing. And so we're worried about the Twins. We're worried about now the Tigers and what the Tigers have done without losing. And those arms getting a little bit more mature, seeing more pitching at the big league level, understanding what hitters are trying to do and what they can now do to hitters. Seeing the Central again is only going to make those arms better. So we won the division by 13 games last year. It's going to be a close race.
Jeff, who won the offseason in the Central?
Well, I think you just come down to the Twins and the Tigers. I think if you're making a list of like top off seasons, they're both in the top 5. You can go either way. I feel like with those two teams, if you want to lean one way or the other, both saw needs and addressed their needs. And I'd probably give a little bit of an advantage to the Twins just because, I love the fact that they're always listening, that they kind of made a trade and then got lucky enough to convince a team to take on Donaldson because of they were just always in motion and they were willing to adapt on the fly. So I'd probably give them the slight edge, but I think there's no wrong answer when you're talking about those two organizations.
Yeah, everybody makes good points. I think I agree with Jeff both ways. I think the Twins are a starter short of having a truly great offseason in my mind, and not just a starter. They came in needing 2 frontline starters and a starting shortstop. Sonny Gray we see as a number 2, and then they added Carlos Correa. They checked that box with authority, but they're missing that other frontline starter, and that's not a small hole to fill. They needed to fill that, and they did not. So, Tigers, Twins, I agree with all of you. We talk about the White Sox. I think the White Sox at this point in time, I agree with Nick, probably at the height of their powers in terms of payroll flexibility. You have these extensions at lower numbers right now. This should be the time they are pushing more chips in. And we hear from Nick that he doesn't feel, and White Sox fans don't feel that they're doing that. But I still feel that they are the class of the division, that they are the clear favorite in this division. And I'd be willing to hear otherwise. Let's start with Rylan on this. Rylan, who's winning the Central in 2022?
I'd be stunned if it wasn't the White Sox. I do like the Tigers' new look team and all their prospects coming up. I think they have the best manager in the division. I like the Twins' moves, but to win the division, I think it's going to have to be the White Sox. Other teams might make a playoff run in the expanded postseason, but the division is the White Sox to lose.
Scott, he's high on the Tigers, man. Is this the year? Is it one and done for the White Sox in the Central?
I would love nothing more, but I still do think that it's the White Sox division until proven otherwise. At the end of the day, 2 of our biggest assets that we're bringing in are going to be rookies, and I think that the ceiling for what Torkelson and Green can provide down the road are unbelievably high. But how much are we really expecting in the rookie seasons? Skubal, Manning, all of their either first or second full seasons. It's still such a young team that while I do 100% and fully believe in the future, and I fully believe in the direction, I think that we could be heading into an era where the Tigers go back to the early 2010s when it was ours every year. I think that could be around the corner. It would be a lot more difficult because the White Sox are young too, and it's just a much better division than it was then. I still think we're probably a year away from seriously giving the White Sox a run for their money. I think at the end of the day, that everything. The bullpen is significantly better than anybody in the division. The lineup is still cream of the crop. The starting rotation is still great. It's still the White Sox division to lose, even though I am a big fan of the Tigers finishing second this year.
Well, I think the feeling was the Twins in 19 and then 2020 we always knew. And Nick, I like this point Nick made about seeing the Tigers in your rear view. That was the same way with the Twins and the White Sox. And I think going into last year,
Big time.
around the same win total is like 89 to 92 in preseason. I know some sites had the Sox, some sites thought the Twins had the edge, and it depended on what you read. But the Sox caught up, and they caught up in a big way. The Twins go out and win 73. Sox win the division, you mentioned, by 13 games. And now it looks like they're settling in. Nick, do you feel like that's the case?
Look, this is a talented Sox team. I can't remember a team like this. You have to go back for me, maybe 93, 94, when you're looking at some of those Ventura, Frank Thomas, Blackjack McDowell teams. You talk about Tim Anderson, Yohan Moncada, a healthy Jimenez and Robert. And then you've got your big two, Lance Lynn and Lucas Giolito, who put on 30 pounds of muscle. And Dylan Cease was being talked about in the Cy Young conversation. So those are your three. You sprinkle in, Dallas Keuchel, who's bringing he knows he needs to get better, but it's not a bad four guy to have. And then Michael Kopech and whatever he's going to bring. And then we've got a guy like Ronaldo Lopez that could help with some innings at the beginning of the year. I don't know if they're going to go 6 starters at any point, but we've got the bullpen, as you mentioned, too. I mean, one of the more expensive bullpens in all of baseball. We'll see how that plays out if Kimbrel truly is going to stick with the Sox. But, there's a lot of health questions. I mean, the Sox brought in a new conditioning coach this offseason. We had a lot of hamstring injuries. I mean, there's injuries all over the league last year. A guy like Yasmani Grandal is coming off of, leg surgery this offseason. You got to watch his load management. But there's another guy. If he gets hot offensively, there aren't a lot of places to hide in this lineup. Why I'm so tough on this team is, if it's not now, then when to go absolutely all in. A right fielder would be great. Another starting pitcher would be great. But in this division, I think it's definitely the Sox to lose.
Jeff, where are you at in the American League Central?
I just think the White Sox are kind of head and shoulders above everyone. When we were doing our previews at that time, it's like I thought the Tigers were kind of second place just because the emerging talent. But the White Sox are just top in every category. I don't want to say I don't think it's going to be close. I think it'll be closer than it was a year ago. But they're still, they're excellent, and they have pieces to go out and make a trade. Like I almost expect the White Sox and Guardians to make another second baseman trade this year, like they did a year ago. Like, Ahmed Rosario, I should say, is going to end up like playing second for the White Sox before the year is done. It's something like that is likely to happen. I think they'll plug their holes, maybe not with the biggest of names like they did a year ago, but I have faith, and they still have a better minor leagues than people give them credit for as well. It's not like they're completely stripped barren after all those years, which I always look for who has ammunition to go out and improve. They still have that.
I agree. I'll take the Sox. It's painful, but I'll take the Sox this year to win the division. I think that bullpen's nasty, and I think the lineup can be really good. I agree with you, Nick. The American League's a lot better. And even in our conversations, Tigers and Twins having nice off seasons, I think both teams will be better than they were last year, hopefully. For the Twins and for the Tigers are better. And for the Tigers winning 77, but more than 73 for the Twins. But the whole American League, the Blue Jays are going to be tough. Yankees are always tough. The Red Sox are going to be tough. It's going to be tough out there. The Mariners are getting better. The Astros are still good. So every win's going to matter, and there might be a little bit of cannibalism in this division. And for the White Sox, it's going to matter how many games they win. You don't want to be stuck in that, that first wild card round, kind of rolling the dice on a 3-game series. You'd much rather have that bye into the division series, I think, is how it's going to set up this year. But all those wins are going to matter for the White Sox. So I'm scratching my head too, Nick. I'm with you. Why they're not trying to get every single win they can at this point. Talk about midseason trade chips. I'm glad Jeff brought that up. And I want to start with my midseason most valuable trade chip in this division. I think he's on the Twins. And Rylan mentioned, I think it's probably Carlos Correa. If the Twins have a first half like they did last year, he's opting out after this year, 90%, 95%, unless he's hurt. So I think Carlos Correa is probably the most valuable trade chip. When I ask this, I want us to also think about who is attainable. Jose Ramirez, he's been thrown out there a lot. To me, I think it's much more likely that Correa moves on a quasi 1-year deal than it is that Jose Ramirez moves mid-season. You might disagree with that, Jeff, or others in here, but for me, it's much more likely. So I'll go with Correa, and I want to ask Jeff first, who do you think is the most valuable mid-season trade chip in this division?
So I have conflict, I'll be honest. Jose Ramirez makes sense as a mid-season trade chip. The one thing we can't count about is supposedly we have minority ownership coming in. That's going to eventually become majority ownership, and that the talk is they're taking 35% of the team, but we don't have anything announced yet. If we really knew for sure that they were coming in, I would say Jose Ramirez is off the table, because it's a very toxic relationship with this fan base and the current ownership group. It's the most toxic I've experienced in my 40 years as a Cleveland sports fan. And, most people know about the toxicity of Cleveland sports. We can just leave it with that. So it's bad. And I don't think a new ownership group would want to start on the wrong foot. But that being said, everyone brings up Francisco Lindor and how they traded him off too late. Well, part of that was because of the COVID year and what was going on. Their MO is to trade at 18 months out. That would be midseason. If we don't get a new official minority ownership announcement, I do think he is tradable by the end of July. And I think with his contract, and I mean, he's got the highest WAR of any third baseman over the last 5 years. And the only players with higher WAR as an offensive player over the last 5 years, I believe, is Mike Trout and Mookie Betts. He may not get consistently put in that conversation, and that's maybe because he plays in Cleveland, but Jose Ramirez is legitimately one of the 5 best hitters in baseball. And, I will plant my flag there and say that if it's not him in this division, just internally, I think Correa is probably the only other person that really stands out. It feels like everyone else is kind of moving upwards and onwards, so it's harder to find those trade chips.
Rylan, someone who comes to mind for me is Whit Merrifield. I know we've talked about him a lot in recent years. What's that contract situation looking like? I don't know how many years away he is from free agency, but I know the Royals have kind of shot that down. And at times it felt like it might be best for them to move on from Whit Merrifield. Certainly, I think in 2019 and maybe again in 2020. But what do you think his availability is? Do you think he's the most valuable in-season trade chip in this division?
Yeah, I think for Witt, it would take the Royals just being disastrously bad in the first half, unbelievably bad to trade Witt. I think that this franchise still wants to sell the fan base on 2022 being competitive, 2023 making the jump, and it's harder and harder to do that if you trade a guy like Whit Merrifield. Obviously, he's a free agent in 2023, so we'll see what that holds in terms of re-signing him or trading him. But I think a more realistic trade chip would be maybe an Andrew Benintendi, because the Royals are going to go to arbitration with him. They usually don't go to arbitration. That could get messy, and he's a free agent after this season is over, so you can see where they would kind of have the stars aligned to trade him. Carlos Santana, Hunter Dozier, those guys aren't really good players right now. If they turned it around and the Royals were not competitive, trading those two guys would be an option as well, although they're not really flashy names. But Witt will always be the kind of headline name. I just don't see it happening unless they're just awful this year and on the verge of losing 100-plus games.
Hard for me to see the White Sox with clear trade chips. A, because they've extended all their stars and they're in the middle of a winning window. And B, because I think their top prospects, if I'm not mistaken, are younger and guys they probably want to build around in the future, like Colas and others they've signed internationally. So, Nick, is there anyone on the Sox who could be up outside of Kimbrel? But even if he has a great first half, why are you trading him away?
Yeah, Kimbrel is, he's going to be he's a future Hall of Fame reliever, right? And we were really confused at what we were getting with him last year. Hendricks is our closer, and Kimbrel looked like he just could not fit into that 8th inning role. Talking to a lot of fans, it was really a mental thing with Kimbrel, and he could be a guy absolutely that we flip. But if he doesn't get the correct innings, or if he doesn't get the management that he needs to showcase himself for that opportunity, well, then he's going to be useless. a guy that we've got a couple guys, Berger, that if you package them up with a few other names, you might be able to pull something off. But as a standalone name, it's really Craig Kimbrell. But again, we have to see what he can do for him to have value at all.
Scott, anyone come to mind in Detroit? I think, again, tricky to me.
Yeah, no, it is tricky. I think a lot would be determined on how successful the team is, right? I mean, this is if we had a catastrophic start, which I don't think really anyone expects. I'm pretty confident in saying that at this point. On the first half of the year, then I mean, I guess there's a universe in which like a Jonathan Scope or something was traded on an expiring deal. Robbie Grossman's now on an expiring deal. Something along those lines. If we really did feel like we were completely out of it already before the All-Star break, but I don't really expect this team to be in a position to buy either. So like, I really feel like this is a stand pat year, even with those two guys on expiring deals. I don't know. Like this front office has yet to make any trade of, I think, period, involving any prospects. Like we have not moved a single prospect in about half a decade. So I think that I'm not confident that even if we were in buy mode, that it would be like that aggressive. And on top of that, I don't really think we're in the business of selling anymore either. So I agree. I think looking elsewhere is probably in the division is probably the best way to go when it comes to finding trade pieces. I think Correa is pretty much the obvious choice there if you're looking across the whole division.
Unfortunately, guys, a lot of early first-round picks in this division in the last handful of years. Twins first-round pick or the first pick in the draft in 2017. Tigers and Royals have had high picks. The White Sox have had high picks. It's happened a lot, and people like to rip on the Central, but man, we're on the come up, and I'll keep saying that. Which farm system do you guys think is most set up to succeed in the future? For the Sox, they've graduated a lot of guys. Jeff mentions they still have a lot of talent there. Rylan, the Royals, Asa Lacy, Bobby Witt Jr., the best prospect in baseball. Certainly a lot to look at there. Scott, Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, whole lot to like. And then Jeff mentions a super deep Guardian system. And I think for the Twins, about league average is a system, a lot of starters in the upper minors that are ready to go. And I think will hopefully contribute this year. But who do you guys think? And I'll start with you, Jeff, the prospect guy, former scout, if I'm not mistaken there. Who do you think has the best farm system in this division?
Well, it comes down to what do you like, depth or blue chip talent. The Royals and the Tigers have more of that blue chip, but I'm a firm believer, in other sports trading down is good, and I think in Major League Baseball just having a depth is more important. So I lean towards the Guardians. You can call me the homer in this case. I will say, if you look, Keith Law last year had their farm system ranked second in baseball. They've gotten a lot of top 10 ranks, and just it goes for days, and they know what they do well, and they target those players. It's like I remember on draft day this past year, I got a text from a scout. It's like, where do you think the Guardians are going? They always keep their mouth shut. We can't get anything, and we're nervous they're going to go for our guy. I'm like, look for the college pitcher with a strikeout rate under 3 or a walk rate under 3, a strikeout rate over 10. And then in 20 rounds, they drafted 17 of those guys, 16 out of those guys out of 21 picks. Like, they know what they do and they develop it well. And that's why like the next set of arms is sitting there in AAA ready to come up and join them.
I have a feeling Rylan and Scott will disagree. Rylan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's between the Royals and the Tigers. I think that the blue chip prospects are how you kind of sustain yourself and become good teams as small market teams, especially in Kansas City, where you're not going to land any of the top guys. I will say that the edge, I think, right now goes to the Tigers because we have seen more of them have success right now and more have that label as kind of fresh and new because the Royals have brought up Daniel Lynch, they've brought up Brady Singer, they've brought up Chris Bubich, they've brought up Jackson Kowar, and they haven't taken off as those blue chip guys just yet. And maybe they never will. So I think that's why the edge goes to the Tigers right now. Obviously, the Royals do have Bobby Witt Jr., who's supposed to be the best prospect in all of baseball. They have MJ Melendez, who's supposed to be elite, and same with Nick Pratto. But we'll see how the Royals actually fare. I'd put the Royals 2 and the Tigers at 1, but it's very close.
Nick, if we had this conversation 2 years ago right now, it would be consensus White Sox. Where are you at today in this division? Which farm system do you think is best set up for success in the future?
Sox fans have been, again, looking at Detroit, not only for what they have on the Major League Ball Club, but what they've got in their farm system. And the Sox, we're out of that. We're out of that window, that conversation. We've got some international guys, Colas and Yoelqui Cespedes, and that's been kind of our thing as of the last few years, is going the international route. And we took some arms in the last few drafts, and we'll see. We got a guy that's hurt right now, but we'll see what happens. But a lot of our top 10 picks over the last few years, they're on other teams, and we don't have any homegrown talent in the starting rotation right now. So when you have it, it's great. But then it's like, what do you do with those prospects? How do you manage that to on the field wins at the big league level? And we are keeping our eyes closely on what Detroit's doing. So I'll go Detroit.
Always fun. And we all have experience in this, certainly, because at least, Cleveland less so, but at least one of the last 5 or 6 years, our teams have been terrible. So we know what it's like to prospect watch and see how those guys fare at the major league level. And I think, Scott, for you, a lot of excitement in Motor City for Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green. And I think you are going to pick the Tigers. Am I mistaken?
No. I think the key with the way you phrased that question is set up for success in the future. And with what the Tigers currently have in their major league system and what holes are left, it's very intentional. The holes that they have left in the major league system are very much where we have talent coming through the minors, right? So I think it's really just set up to perfectly match the puzzle pieces of that. And I think it's pretty comfortable that the Tigers farm system is within this division the best set up for its team's success in the near future. As everybody is aware, Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson. But then even a lot of people were really impressed with the 2021, just this past year's draft, as kind of, and it's early and a lot of those kids haven't even played yet, obviously, but as just kind of a nice, refreshing, hey, we didn't just get a top 5 pick and that's the only talent we got out of this draft. This is actually a whole draft where kids are being ranked within the top 10 of the organization already. Dylan Smith is a huge addition. And we're in the international market for the first time in my entire life. Like, Dave Dombrowski could not have given less of an anything about the international signing market. And now we are starting to see, the last 3 international periods, we've broken our own signing bonus, like the teams or signing bonus record of bringing in prospects like that. Signing guy like Campos is a guy people are super excited about, etc. So this is not only do we have the top end talent, but over the last 2 calendar years specifically, they have really filled out the rest of it as well. Alex Faedo, a former, the ace of one of the best rotations in college baseball history, like he's probably going to get some experience out of the bullpen coming off of Tommy John this year. There is a lot more than just that Torque and Green. And I think that is what gives me confidence in the farm that even 2 years ago with Mize, Manning, Skubal, Green, I didn't have as much confidence in, but now I kind of do, because we're starting to add that depth along with the blue chip talent, as you said.
This might not be the National League East, folks, but I am comfortable and confident in saying this division has the best systems, because I believe the White Sox, it's a little bit of an illusion, because Luis Robert was a prospect a year ago, right? So you graduate those guys, and then all of a sudden your farm system drops, but those guys are actually in the majors and they had just graduated. And I understand that's how it works, but sometimes that can be a little bit of a misconception. And the other systems in here, at least in the top half, if not in the top 10, in the Tigers and Royals and Guardians as well. So guys, thank you so much. It's going to be a fun year in the AL Central. Hopefully, we've been saying this. I think I've said this on the podcast for 3 years now in preseason. Like, this is going to be a better division this year. I actually believe it this year. And I think we all believe it this year. Going to be a ton of fun, guys. Thank you so much. And let's chat soon.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.